Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. This is the Budget and Finance Subcommittee meeting. This meeting is being held fully remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts June 16, 2021 order extending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A, Section 20. For open meeting law, any member of the public may make an audio or video recording of this meeting. I'm assuming if you're listening or attending, you've already gotten the link. And let's do a roll call and call to order. I'll go ahead with the roll call. Member Johnson-Musad?
Here.
Member Martini? Although I know that she's planning to attend, Susan Ekstrom is here. We have a majority of the committee. Also in attendance, we have Assistant Superintendent Karen Patnode, Superintendent Christine DeBarge, and Mr. Fancy Business Manager Andy Piquette. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Piquette. And we are called to order. Can I get an approval of the minutes from February 3rd, 2023, or can I get a motion to approve them?
So moved.
I will second, and we'll go ahead and vote. Member Johnson-Musad?
Yes.
And Member Ekstrom also approve the minutes from February 3rd. Let's move on to our third topic today, review of FY 2024 budget. Superintendent, take it away.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so you can see if I'm just going to start at the bottom to give you put you out of your misery, and we can see. I apologize for the scrolling. So at this point, and I'll let Andy interject as desired. The biggest piece right now, we have a total proposed all funds increase of 8.04 and a proposed increase for the local of 10.35. Andy, correct me, but last math we did, about 90% of that 10% increase reflects the anticipated settling of our contracts. So that is about 90% of that is salary increases. There is about $400,000 that is reflective of the 14% special ed tuition increase. So just over $400,000 of the 2.1 million, which you can see at the bottom right here. This 2.1 million is the increase. About 400,000 of that is special education. At this point, we're hearing that, there is still a proposal for pothole money to be used in the state budget to offset the increase for districts, but we don't have that at this point. So obviously that's a huge number. I'd like to share that some reductions are already reflected in that number. And we are also using just about $1 million additional ESER 3 funding that we had not planned to use for salaries for FY 24. But if we didn't, that would be, see right here, you can see the general offset of $1 million. If we didn't do that, this would clearly be, a 10.35 is an exceptionally substantial increase. The use of the additional ESER funds does, quite frankly, present a problem, an additional problem for FY 25. We globally knew that when the ESER funds were gone, that we would likely hit a funding cliff. It's there. We are not alone. Other districts anticipate having the same types of staffing issues for FY25. And truth be told, a number of districts, based on superintendents I've been talking with, are also, anticipating some increased budget requests this year. Doesn't help us any in Greenfield, but it's not, it doesn't appear that this is out of the norm to have a higher than typical budget increase. So I can begin at the beginning and kind of talk about what we're looking at. Unless either of you have any specific questions, or Andy, if you want to add anything in at this point. You just.
Okay, sorry. So I guess, and of course I've also heard that about other districts that are having the same concerns with ESER and has come out, and the other discussions that I've heard and things that I've attended, it's what is most apparent to me is these funds that were distributed to everyone through ESER were actually funds that were needed for some time, regardless of there being a pandemic or not. I mean, it isn't, the things that we have used the ESER funding for aren't things that we didn't need previously. And so my concern, and I think probably this is a universal concern, my concern is when the ESER funds go away, we're going to have these things that we need to support, because these are the things that are required for us to be able to teach our students and the children in this community and every other community is what is necessary. And with the increase of special education tuitions and things like that, I'm curious, and I'm sure the answer is yes, but I'll ask anyway. Are you planning to, and it's I guess a short-term expense for long-term gain, are you planning on building a more supportive special education services or pupil services department, so that some of the funds that are leaving the district actually wouldn't leave the district anymore?
So,
because we would have students that would come back or not go anywhere.
So there's a couple of elements to that. And, so the very short answer is yes. The longer answer is that the impact, making change to a special education program is multi-layered. It's one, having a strong core general ed curriculum is a foundation for improving special education programming, because one of the fundamentals around identifying students with special education is ensuring that they have a research-based, consistently implemented core curriculum. So the work that we're doing with all of the it's not research-based, high quality instructional materials and the professional development and all of that is part of the foundation of working to address some of the needs in our special education program. We are working to improve options for programming. It is not a one-year process to do that. The other piece is, I don't know if the needs that we're seeing in our students are directly related to the impacts of the pandemic, if it is just reflective of the needs of the currently enrolled students. But, we have students that have substantial needs, and simultaneously we're working to address, some of the programming situations. But conversely, some of our students have such heightened needs that I cannot guarantee you to say that once we get to X place, every one of our out-of-district students can return, because there are some students that have a level of need such that regardless of the quality of in-district programs. Sometimes students need an even more intensive program than that. So it's a little bit of a balance.
Absolutely.
You know, so some of what you see in the budget does reflect some elements of addressing some of our programming, such as, having a full-time nurse leader. While that may not seem like it's addressing special education issues, overseeing the nursing department was part of what was under the pupil services department. And certainly Dr. Dickinson is not a nurse. There are a lot of elements to the nursing supports that require a high level of clinical knowledge. And none of our building level nurses really have the time to do the depth of service for that. So having a full-time nurse leader supports that, allowing the pupil services department to do additional or different work than, some of what they were doing. We also, you'll see in the budget, the addition of a full-time 504 coordinator that is under the pupil services department. You may or may not realize that it's not special education. It's part of the ADA, but it's not for students. It is not a special education program. Students in general education can be on a 504 accommodation plan, but there are timelines and federal laws that regulate that. And so having a staff person hopefully identified to facilitate all of those meetings, rather than asking our staff in individual buildings to do that, albeit for a stipend, but it requires a fairly high level of training to do. And the ask for some of our staff, it was just too much with teaching loads. So, there are pieces that we're trying to do to support the program, but it's not a one-year thing. And I can't say by the end of this upcoming school year, we're going to be finished. And then, to your previous point about use of the ESSER funds, I agree that we've been using the money to do things that the district needs. We had been trying to use the funding to support as many projects, as much implementation of things that were not staff as possible, to minimize the funding cliff. But with the addressing of contracts, especially for our teachers, our Unit A people, just a reminder, we're going back to FY22. So it's addressing any agreement that would come to fruition. It would impact FY22, which then, is exponential on any increase that may come to be for FY23. And then on top of that, any negotiated increase for 24. So it's not just the current year's increase on top of the current year's salaries. So to the positive, four of our units would not require retro pay, but any negotiated increases would be in effect for this budget that we're looking at. We did get access to approximately $575,000 from the city side with contract stabilization and I'd say the promise of Medicaid funding to help settle the retroactive, but we also did have to remove some things at this point from the ESSER 3 grant that we were anticipating. One of those is several $100,000 we had allocated for purchasing of new textbooks. The other is the balance of the rooftop energy recovery units for the middle school. I don't know if either of you, Susan or Glenn, remember we have energy recovery units on the roof of the middle school that need to be replaced. I had applied for, and we got a state grant to help pay for a huge chunk of that, but there is a balance. That balance was my entire capital request to the city, but we had also put that funding into the ESSER grant in case capital didn't fund it. And I took that out of the ESSER grant to help address any issues for funding retroactive. So very long answer to your
And-
question.
Well, one, I would never anticipate a time that we would not have to send people out of district for special education, just because, you know, I know the ideal is that the dream is that public schools can answer all of those things that every student would ever need, but the reality is that just isn't going to happen. It just isn't. There isn't. It's just it just won't happen. It just, anyway.
Right.
My question, following up, sorry, on the capital expense that we're paying out of ESSER, I know that we are allowed to do that, but what would the rationale be for the city not paying capital expense for those, for the middle school piece?
Oh,
Aside from we don't have the money, I mean, that's I get that, but we're always made very conscious that the city owns all the buildings, and so therefore it's all capital expense, and we talk about that quite a bit when we talk about budgets, and so I'm just curious if there's a rationale beyond that.
I haven't heard anything following my capital presentation. I haven't heard anything one way or another. I don't know that they won't fund it, but it was sort of hedging our bets. To the positive, the state grant that would pay for that portion of it does not, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it does go out a couple of years. It's not, if the city, for whatever reason, doesn't grant that capital request for this fiscal year, that doesn't negate our ability to, you know, request it moving forward, but truly we would need to kind of have it the year after to use our state grant. The grant does pay for an engineering study to do all the specs for the project, and that is in process. So that is irrelevant to capital funding. So we'll have a better idea of the total cost when that's done. And then I can share that. The other piece that is in ESSER 3 that I did not take out to try to address the budget request is the security upgrades that have been in there. You know, so
I'm glad you're able to protect that.
Well, it's there right now.
So far.
It's there now. Yeah, I feel strongly about that. We also kept $500,000 in technology in the grants. There was closer to 900,000 in, and we took some of that money to offset other expenses to try to make this a little less yucky, technical terms, sorry, but you know, so we did reduce the amount of money available for technology, but the district has servers that are in need of replacement. Our interactive whiteboards are dying slowly but surely, and we have to address our Chromebooks, which by the end of 24 are going to be primarily end of life. So I don't expect that the $500,000 we still have there will address all of our tech needs. I felt a little better with the $1 million. But last year, the city capital committee did tell me to bring forward tech requests going forward. I didn't this year, but you know, that's certainly, you know, they appeared sincere when they told me to do that. So I expect that would be okay moving forward. So that certainly would be the plan next year.
I wonder if, I know that you didn't bring it forward, and I leave this to you, but I wonder if it would be wise to say to them, look, this is what it was and this is what we did. It's sort of a double-edged sword, because then are you just saying in the future we'll take care of it ourselves, or we will able to take care of it ourselves? on the other hand, it feels important to me that they know how large the expense was. I could go either way.
For technology,
Yeah.
you know, prior to his departure, Joel had gotten a quote for a replacement of our interactive whiteboards, and to do it district-wide would have been the entirety of the $500,000. So, you know, we don't have to do it that way. We can do it in very different ways. So now that we have hired a new technology director, who will be starting on Monday, you know, we'll get our staff technology advisory committee moving and see if they can help us, you know, prioritize. Servers have to be up at the top. We have to do that. You know, if we don't replace servers, we're spending money to extend warranties. And so that's sort of silly.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. We do have.
Andy, you want to go ahead, or Christine, whatever?
Sorry.
Unless Glenn, you have questions. I'm sorry. My
No,
apologies.
I'll raise my hand if I have a question.
Okay. So I'll go through, but I'm going to let Andy yell. So just as a reminder, this was last year's local appropriation, the FY23 proposed local, then increase or decrease in real dollars, increase or decrease from 23 to 24 in percentages. This column here, the green, is all funds. So that's combining the local funding as well as any of our grants and revolving accounts. This peach colored column, FY24 proposed local, is just what we would be looking for from the city's budget. And then this marigold color reflects what we're using from grants and revolving. Okay, so some of what you're going to see in the staffing columns, you're going to see increases and decreases. Some of what that reflects is that we're continuing and hopefully finished reflecting people in the exact place where they are. We've had to continue doing some movement. Loretta, Karen, Andy, and I have spent a ton of time over this past year trying to get everybody reflected where they belong. So some of the increase and decrease reflects just movement of people into the correct category rather than actual increase or decrease. So this top column, oops, I apologize. All of this is AEL. There is I don't know if anybody has questions about AEL. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Federal Street, one of the things you'll see reflected in the teaching staff position is that Kelly's asking for an additional first grade teacher. That is in anticipation. Right now we have 3 kindergartens, so rolling up our enrollment, we would need an additional first grade. We are just starting kindergarten registration this week, so we'll be monitoring our kindergarten enrollment very closely to see if we need to continue 3 kindergartens for next year. So that's what you're seeing. Integrated arts, those are our specials teachers. What you're basically going to see is all of our art, music, PE, library, all of that is reflected basically between federal and Newton's budgets. That's for no reason other than that's where they are. We have art, music, and PE teachers at federal, but they're just, at Four Corners, but they're just reflected in these buildings. So the grant funding that you see here is actually our elementary school librarian, which we have maintained. I do not wish to eliminate a librarian at our elementaries that we just got back into place. Okay. We do still have some maintenance costs at Green River at this point. We have to maintain, there are elements to it that we need to maintain, including some of the technology because of the security systems and things. So there's a small amount of money reflected there. For coroners, no substantial changes. There are minor changes in materials. Mike, actually, we have a fairly decent reduction in materials. He said that they're good with primarily what they have, so he was able to share with us a fairly significant reduction there. Newton teaching, again, some of what you're going to see. The other piece I'd like to share is some of what you see for the teaching, paraprofessional, all these staff columns also reflects anticipated contract settlements. Nothing is finalized as of yet, so none of this is definite, but we're working with information we feel fairly confident in. So steps, contract steps going from 1 year to the next, there's already built in, regardless of negotiations, some steps in contracts. For teachers, it reflects changes in their educational level. So if they're going from a bachelor's to a master's, or a master's plus 30 additional credits, that's a bump on the salary scale. And so all of that is reflected when you're seeing the salary increases. Okay. Again, I mean, outside of some of the salary, I don't think we're seeing too much, too much of substantial increases anywhere. Okay. Undefined, we have our parking lot rental, central office maintenance.
I'm sorry, hold on a minute.
Holding.
Newton Street builder, is it because we have someone who's going from part-time to full-time, or is just it being they're actually in the spot now?
Monitor Andy, I think that's 2 people, but Andy, can you just clarify why Newton monitor? I see there's a little note, but I can't read that.
Yeah, I'm just getting the note. Hang on.
Yeah, thank you.
Line 7 Oh yeah, right there. Sorry.
Christine, if you enable editing, does that allow you to read the note?
It includes the building sub. It's the building monitor, plus there's a building substitute there.
Okay.
So it is 2 positions.
So
Okay.
Glenn, theoretically, you would think yes, but because this is actually a locked copy for sharing, if I enable editing, all my formula, when Andy sent it, all the formulas go away. But even that doesn't necessarily, for some reason, my version of Excel does not talk to some of the others, and I can't always read the notes. I have to rely on my memory.
Oh boy. Okay.
Exactly. That's why Andy's doing.
IT guy, come on.
Yeah, that's why Andy's doing the checking for me. Okay, good.
That's fine.
Okay.
I just it jumped out at me as a number. It stood out, and I just excuse you.
So I can add a little explanation. In the previous settlement of the Unit A and Unit C contracts, there was language about adding permanent building subs if funding was available. And so certainly we can argue funding may or may not be available. I totally understand that, and that's up for discussion. What it does do is provide at least one guaranteed sub.
Why? I'm certain that this is not the appropriate place to ask that, but food for thought. Why would a building monitor be an 8-year contract? That's all.
Say that again.
Why would a building monitor be in a teacher in a Unit A or C contract? But for a different conversation, I'm quite certain.
Can't speak to that. It was there before I got to Greenfield. I think, the there's two pieces. One, I think both of you know, we've had issues getting substitute coverage for the past 2 years. We do have more subs available this year, but having the building sub does provide a guaranteed person to be available in a building that they're familiar with. The negative is that is at this point, at least 4 positions in the district at a unit C rate that, you know, in the contract, it does say pending, you know, if appropriation is available. So something for consideration. I will tell you the ones that we have are used every day.
Right,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no question on that part.
Right. So if we don't have them, then potentially we're going to spend more on subs than what we're paying for those positions.
Oh, yeah, no, we need building monitors.
So-
Like, just speaking from my own experience and having kids all over the place, they're very useful.
Well, I want to clarify, the building monitor is not what I'm talking about. We also have permanent subs, but they're both of them at Newton are listed on this same line.
Sorry, okay.
That's all right. Okay. So moving, we already talked about central office. The middle school, again, not seeing huge changes.
Just a clarifying point on the central office, though, if we can go back as far as some of the maintenance stuff, it looks there are substantial increases in the central office, the equipment repairs, maintenance, building, contracted services. That's a combination of Eric consolidating into centralized so that he can have more control per se and use it in the buildings as he sees fit, and also some contracts of things that he has found that were, we'll say, never memorialized in the maintenance department. So it's just a combination of capturing those. You'll see in some of the other building areas, some maintenance contracted services having some reductions. So it is kind of overall a net, but there are still some things in there that are an actual increase.
Thank you. One of the costs at the middle school, a new position reflects that we have numbers of students coming up from the elementary level into the middle school in one of our substantially separate special ed programs, which requires an additional teacher. There's laws around the numbers of students and paraprofessionals you need to have for students in those types of programs. So at this point, we expect the need to have an additional teacher. So that is built in. Okay, trying to think, Andy, anything substantially different? Not really. Any questions about middle school? Okay. High school, same story. The staffing increases you see are a combination of potential contract settlements, steps, degree changes, and people being put in the correct positions. There are some minor increases, like we need some replacement for some of our foreign language textbooks. There are some increases in some of the athletic costs, but again, fairly minor given all things. Just looking to see these last lines in each buildings are actually reflective of Eric's needs. So again, I don't think we're seeing any huge increases in anything except the salary lines at this stage. Any high school questions? Okay.
Wait, yes, hold on.
Yes. Okay, going back.
Takes me a while to find where everything is.
That's okay.
Shoot. Other services principal? What is that? I don't
It's,
remember seeing it previously. That's why I asked.
it would, now if I could find it, that would be helpful.
What, line 145?
Thank you. That Andy, can you speak to what we've paid out of that? Wait a minute. Oh, I can tell you what that is, the Beacon program.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the $45,000. As soon as I saw it in the grant line, I knew what it was. This is primarily reflective of moving the costs for the Beacon program into the high school budget.
Glenn, are you familiar with the Beacon program?
I
If
don't,
not, it's fine. I just want to make sure.
no, I'm not familiar with the Beacon program.
Okay.
So the Beacon program is a program that actually Karen started working on with folks at GCC prior to when I got to Greenfield. It's a half day. It's a little bit of an eclectic program. It's credit recovery options. It's helping students with employment skills. You may remember last year, Karen shared that one of our students actually had won. Karen, you can correct me. He won either recognition or a contest because of the company, the business that he started through working with Beacon.
Yeah, it was GCC's Take the Floor competition. It's at Hawks and Reed, and they promote small business and getting small businesses off the ground. And one of our high school students was able to get his remote car detailing operation up and running. So very exciting for our kids. But, you know, this program really helped him explore other alternatives and stay in school. So definitely a plus.
Thank you for actually.
We've had a lot of success with that program is from what I can see.
I
Mm-hmm.
would certainly agree with that. So, you know, we've reflected some cost. We're in the process of talking to GCC about the future of the program, but that's, you know, we wanted to reflect what we've allocated for the cost at least. Okay. School nursing. So you may remember at the beginning of this conversation, I made reference to the fact that we've already made some reductions to get it down to a 10.3% increase. Some of those are related to currently vacant positions. We had a float nurse position, a float custodian position. The second assistant special education director has been vacant for this whole year. So those are some of the positions that we actually eliminated from this FY24 budget. I know we're having the conversation about improving special ed service, and then we talk about eliminating an assistant sped director. It seems to be contradictory. What you will see in here, well, what is in here is a third educational team leader. So we're hoping that a filled ETL position will have more benefit than holding on to the funding for a vacant assistant sped director position. Obviously, the committee can do whatever it would like with that, but right now, that's one of the ways that I'm choosing to get it down to a 10.3. Okay. Karen's budget, she's expensive. No. Again, tech instructional supplies. Some of this was Karen or Andy remind me, this is stuff coming out of we moved it out of Karen's budget. There's a decrease of 80,000. Please remind me what we reduced there.
Well, I think, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of that was coming out of the grant funds, but we also had let go of some of our subscriptions for technology that we weren't using or no longer operating. So we've been able to
That's
clean
correct.
up
Okay, great.
some of that.
Okay. And oops, sorry. And we are using, you know, we're using grant funding where we can, but again, this is one of the places where we would have seen several $100,000 reflected for the purchase of textbooks district-wide that we reduced, so that we could use that funding to help offset salary increases. Okay. Athletics, these are our district athletic
Hold
costs.
on, let me just interrupt briefly. I wanted to let everyone know that Member Martini is here. I don't know if you've been here for a while, Kate. I'm just seeing your name now. Apologies if I've missed you for some time.
No, I came in like halfway through,
Okay,
so I am here. My apologies.
glad you're here.
Sorry, I'm just putting her into. Kate, would you say it was close to like 120, 125 when you logged in?
Yeah, like 125, 130, something like that. Over
Okay.
130.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So here's one of the reductions that I just referenced. We eliminated, this shows the elimination of the float nurse position. This here, the red shows the add of the 504 coordinator position. Again, we don't have to go in that direction, and that could be a change that gets made, but at this point, we feel that it would have a fairly significant benefit for our families and staff who, interface with the 504s. Okay, network. Technology director, we did just sign a new one, so there is a little bit of an adjustment that will be made in the 24 budget, but not much. I'm looking, so you'll see this bottom line technology equipment. This reflects the $500,000 still remaining in the grant for technology. So the 900% increase is really reflecting that. And then, it would be primarily offset with grants. So again, that's a discussion we'll have to have and decisions that will need to be made about, do we keep that money in the budget? Okay, I'm looking, most of the system-wide things have stayed static. Special education, looking to see again, a lot of what you'll see is actual, Andy tracks. So here you'll see something $35,000 in sped tutor salary. Previously, that hadn't been reflected. It was pulled together based on needs that we identified. So that's sort of put in where it's necessary. Andy, do you have the ability to speak to the sped tuition piece at all?
Yes, previously it was lumped into one line, but we have to report out to DESE for reporting purposes on the end of the year financial report for our tuitions to mass schools, out of state, collaborative, and non-public. So when you look and see at row 243 in FY23, that was in total. We've actually asked Dr. Dickinson to then now break it out as required finally. So you'll see it spread out through those 244 through 247 in FY24.
Okay, any questions about special education? I have to say, because I'm sharing my screen, if anybody has a question for me, you just have to yell because I can't see all of you. Okay. 504 is fairly contracted services. What is this line, Andy? I can't see. Teacher tutor, that's reflecting accurate costs in that line. Okay, custodial staff district wide, again, you'll see this is the reduction in the float position that I talked about. Okay. You'll see a $50,000 increase in gas and repairs in our transportation line. That's
Hold on.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay.
We only, so software for special education is only $4,600 or thereabouts? Or am I looking? Oh, it's probably under sped technology supplies district wide, yes?
Well, I have to find what we're looking at.
I'm sorry, 252, 253 lines versus line 239. That's probably what it is.
Okay, 252 and 253 are for students on 504 plans exclusively.
Only.
Only.
And that's really only 4,600 in software?
Well, let me find you. 239. No, that's not right. Sorry.
The combined of, she's saying a combined of 252 and 53 is $4,600.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really that's the amount for technology for people exclusively on 504s?
Well, I mean,
It
yes.
feels
at
low,
this-
I guess, is my point.
But again, that would be software that's needed solely for those students or those devices. If it's a program we're using across the district and they access it, it wouldn't necessarily be reflected there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, sorry, who's done that? The $50,000 here in gas and repairs, that was an actual increase. Carol Collins from the city met with Jake, our transportation coordinator, to review some of the factors that Jake talked about is the increase in diesel and the van that we have that we need to make some of the furthest trips for our students is actually the diesel vehicle. So some of that is reflective of the increased cost in diesel and the fact that that vehicle is making the furthest trips. So, you know, he met with Carol. We'll continue to talk with her about things. One of the things that's not reflected in this budget is the fact that Jake has talked about needing to get a new vehicle for the transportation department. We're investigating lease versus purchase, but you know, the purchase is between $80,000 and $100,000 last I recall. Andy, you can nod or okay.
What
So
kind
we're
of
looking-
vehicle are we talking about? Like a bus or a van?
A small passenger bus, the
Yeah.
small yellow bus.
Yeah.
So that's something that hasn't even been factored in. Okay. This $1 million is, if I'm not mistaken, Andy, solely a placeholder to reflect the use of the $1 million from ESER to offset salaries. It's not really $1 million sick leave buyback. This, Andy, this is the school committee stipends, correct?
Stipends and the secretary.
Right, but the stipends had previously not been reflected, we discovered, right?
It's the reverse. The secretary wasn't
Okay.
reflected in the line, and so it was
We added
putting
her.
it there where, right.
Okay, and that's it. That's a 10.35.
Thanks for all your work on it.
You know, I wish it was, so a couple things that we're doing this. Every year, the school committee pays for half of the Strings for Kids program. You know, that's a factor. We're looking at class sizes, where especially at you know, the high school, to make sure we're using our staff efficiently. This does not reflect any significant personnel impact. Like I said, the reductions to get it from a 13 to a 10 were pretty much eliminating vacant positions. So any impact past this, which I understand we may need to address, but I feel like any impact past this will impact the educational program. It will affect something that our kids have access to.
Yep.
So I know that I think Karen and Andy have heard this from me for some time, is we have, and I've never understood prior to your coming here, Christine, every superintendent presentation to the city and presentation of the budget has always been less than what is actually necessary to provide the best education possible for the kids in Greenfield. And people would be, well, I don't want to show the city that it's going to be 5% increase, or we can't go anything more than a 4% increase. And my point of view is, I don't care what the increase is. People need to know how much it costs. And that it's a 10% increase does not scare me. In fact, I think I said this last year, that it isn't higher than that is surprising to me. And it should be to everyone who pays attention to school budgets.
Well, now keep in mind, I did say I already made some reductions. So
exactly. And so, when the city will come back or the mayor will come back saying you can't present a budget with this much of an increase, my answer is, well, then I suggest you figure out some way to provide more income to the city to make available, because this is what it costs. It isn't negotiable. but it is what it is. And regardless of someone saying you can't have that much, I don't care. Like, yes, I care. However, this is what it's going to cost to do the things that we want to do. If you're not interested in that, then we'll make reductions and we'll do what we need to do. However, this is what it costs. And I want everyone to be very conscious of that. So when I'm looking at this, yes, I see increases, but I see necessary increases. And so should the conversation come of, well, you can't present something like this, I understand that I fully have your back, and we'll give anyone the same speech when they talk about it. It's just, it costs what it costs. You can have students that are well educated or not. And I understand that it's much more complex than that, but that is my point of view and has always been my point of view. And I, this is my 6th year, and I appreciate this work more than I have every other year. You guys have worked very hard, and I can see where everything is aligned and things like that. So I'm very appreciative. Member Martini, you haven't been here and been able to ask questions, and I bet you have some. I'm trying to be conscious of time. We have 5 minutes left, and I know that superintendent is happy to answer some questions offline, but Kate, if there's something pressing that you want to bring to the front, please do. Again, you're going to have to sort of speak up because I can't see anything. So I'm going to put myself on mute and take the floor if you so need to.
I do not have issues to bring up. I would second what you just said, except that I think that not even providing the best education to our students, but rather even just the free, appropriate public education to which they are all entitled requires some significant investments on the part of the city. And the past funding for the school department has not been adequate for that. So we shall see how things play out in the near future, but I would advocate alongside you from that angle.
Okay, so I want to just share a couple quick things before, because Susan, I know you said you want to hold to time. One, looking at actually, I'm gonna have Andy say it so that I use all of his good words. Andy, can you speak to the Chapter 70 potentials?
Sure. The governor has released preliminary numbers for their budget, and the Chapter 70 in the released is an additional $498,680 for Greenfield. So more often than not, that's the floor. So that's what we could, I feel comfortable saying that we could guarantee the city receiving that for education in addition to what we've currently received. It is the third year of the 6-year phase in of the Student Opportunity Act, which is what primarily all that is attributable to, because our enrollment is declining. So
But so what would that bring our balance to then from Chapter 70 expectation?
Chapter 70 would be going from 15,704,567 in FY23 to a preliminary 16,203,247 in FY24.
So
Thank you.
the other thing I will say, and I heard Susan, you and Kate very loudly, and I appreciate, but I also want to share, if the subcommittee wants me to create a budget reflective of less of an increase, I will do that. That's obviously part of your deal, is to let me know. So I am presenting this as the superintendent's version of the budget, but if the subcommittee wants me to make changes to it prior to it being presented, just say so, and I will do that.
All right, so I want to make, let's do a motion so that we can discuss that. I would take a motion to request the superintendent prepare a budget with less of an increase to our over last year's budget. Can I get a second or a move?
So moved.
Thank you. As far as I'm concerned, my answer is no. I would I wouldn't want to see you make it one change at all. I expect that you and Andy are both smart people, so you'll probably do one anyway, knowing that we're expecting that something will come from the city that is lesser than this. But I wouldn't change a thing. I'm going to ask for comments specifically from the members of the committee, because I want to make sure that we'll have our comments, I guess. Member Johnson Musad, what would you think?
Yeah, I agree with this approach. I think I'm in favor of advancing it as is, so I would vote no on the motion to reduce it.
Member Martini?
I'm going to vote no as well, but as a matter of interest, Dr. DeBarge, if you were going to cut something, what would you cut first?
I will share that right now. I would prefer not to share, because it has been my practice as a superintendent in any district to speak with any staff who could be affected by a potential budget reduction in person prior to speaking about it publicly. And I have not done that. So if I could respectfully request not having that conversation right now. But I can share some of the things I already shared, Kate, in that we have $500,000 still in the grant for technology. We have $100,000 in the grant still for science textbooks at the high school, because ours are incredibly outdated. And science is an MCAS tested subject, whether we like it or not. Our kids should have current reference material for that. So there are some things in the budget, even just in grants that I would certainly consider prior to any other reductions. Not that that wouldn't have an impact on things, but it, there that is.
Thanks.
Sure.
So I am going, let's vote on that motion if everyone is amenable to that. Member Johnson Musad,
No,
Member Martini,
No,
and Member Ekstrom, also a no. So Superintendent and Business Director, Finance Manager, whatever your title is, please do not change this budget. Present it to the full committee as is.
Okay. I will do so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or issues?
I do not have anything. Member Martini or Member Johnson Musad?
nope.
no.
Okay, unless there is anything from our esteemed colleagues, I'm calling for an adjournment.
So moved.
Second,
Excellent. Member Johnson Musad,
Yes.
Member Martini,
yes.
and I am also a yes. We are adjourned at 2:04.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you again for all of your work. I know that it's time consuming and tedious at times.
Budget's never tedious.
Well, it's certainly time consuming.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
afternoon.
you.
Enjoy the snow day.
Thank you.
Enjoy the
Thank you.
snow. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
See if I can figure out how to get out of here.